Traditional sweet recipes from Malta, available online at www.traditionalmaltesesweets.com. Traditional sweet recipes, creating a small slice of Malta that feels like home.
Merħba fil-programm Maltese DownUnder, programm bi produzzjoni kollha kemm mill-belt ta' Melbourne. Jiena Marlin Xikluna insellmilkom. Fil-programm illum li huwa l-ewwel programm tat-tielet staġun ta' Maltese DownUnder fuq Channel 31 ser inżuru kemm Malta kif ukoll Sydney. F'Malta ser nitkellmu mal-awtriċi Josephine Burden u ma' żewġ plejers mill-Malta Rugby League. U fi żjara tagħna f'Sydney ser nlaqgħukom mal-mużiċista Joe Muscat. L-ewwel taqsima tagħna llum ser toħodna f'Malta fejn il-kollega tiegħi Mark Avellino ser jitkellem mal-awtriċi Awstraljana ta' nisel Malti Josephine Burden.
So you've been living in Malta now for how many years?
This time it's 7 years. When I retired from full-time paid work in Australia, I decided to give myself a gap year. That was 8 years ago, and I went travelling. And I came and stayed in Marsa for 3 months and looked around and wondered if I could make a new life for myself back here in Malta.
So your background is Maltese, Scottish, Australian. So explain your background a little bit to us.
Well, my mother was born here in Malta, in Cospicua, just across the harbour in the Three Cities area.
Yeah, lovely place.
And yes, and her mother was a Vela, Maltese, going way back. I've researched some of the family history, and there's marriages on her side of the family going back to 1760 in St. Paul's Shipwreck here in Valletta.
Oh wow.
Yes,
okay.
yeah. So there's that connection. My mother then repeated the same pattern in that she married a Scotsman. My grandmother had also married a Scotsman. And my mother then followed my father into his life, whereas my grandparents are buried here in Malta.
So it's a long lineage and connection here, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So when you when did you start writing novels?
Well, I kind of had the idea for my first novel for 15, 20 years, even before I'd retired, because I went on an island hopping holiday with my mother around the west coast of Scotland, and each night we sat down for an hour and I tape recorded her. In those days, that was the technology. I tape recorded her stories. And my first intention was just to write her life, just for my family. But I didn't get around to doing that until I'd finished full-time paid work. And then it expanded beyond my mother's stories. It also became my story about coming to live here and my experiences growing up in Malta, and so it became a mother-daughter story.
You're very much a world traveller, aren't you? Because you've lived in a few different locations in your lifetime.
Yeah.
To make that decision to relocate, like I assume you were in Australia for a fair while, to make the decision to pick up everything and relocate, was that a difficult decision, or what was sort of the driver behind some of that?
And that's a good question, an interesting question. I was in Australia for the whole of my working life, more or less. A few years before that I'd spent in Bahamas and in England teaching. When I came to retire, and I was looking at this another, hopefully 30 years of life, that I wanted to live well. And I started to think about what was the best way to do that.
Yeah.
And Australia has been so good to me. You know, it's a wonderful country and it's a great place to live. But you have to have a car just to go and visit your friends or go to the supermarket. It's a huge place. And I just started to think, well, maybe I want somewhere that's smaller, where I can actually walk everywhere, to the theatre, to the cultural venues, to the ferries across to Slima and across to the three cities.
Yeah.
So Malta just became the natural kind of choice. It seemed to be the place where I was most likely to be able to live a full and rich life.
Which you seem to very well have adapted to the island. Like I've seen that you're doing poetry readings, you're very involved within the whole community here. You're going off to Gozo shortly to do small readings over there. So with the two novels that you've already published, which are obviously these guys here. So
yes.
You've got Songs for a Blind Dad and Washing Up in Malta.
This was the first
That was the first one. So are they, how autobiographical would you say they are?
Well, what I do is actually life writing, which means that I draw on personal experience to shape a narrative, shape a story.
Yeah.
It's not the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, but it draws on the things that I've experienced in my life, and then I kind of combine characters here, or I choose what I'm going to put into the narrative.
Yeah. When you set out to write the first novel, did you already know you were working on a trilogy at that point, or
No.
did it just developed?
It evolved, yes. When I first started, even the first novel, Washing Up in Malta, started out just to be a documentation of my mother's life. But as I came to write it, I found I was thinking about my own life and how my mother's life and my life were similar in some transition stages, childhood, coming of age, but also very different because we lived at different times during the course of the 20th century. So it changed. But the other thing that happened was that I started to think about other aspects of my life, and so the second book in a way emerged out of the first book.
And then I guess the third one will be whatever.
Yes, well, the third one is actually about my travels around the Mediterranean, about once I'd got here to Malta and then started exploring this whole amazing sea. But running alongside of that is I talk about, see, you can see I'm still thinking about this, my journey into old age. And as part of that, it's my the research that I'm trying to do about some of the other women who have lived around the Mediterranean Sea, and the stories that they may have told but are often not told in our culture as it is now.
Josephine, it's been really wonderful getting to know you and getting to know your work a little bit better, and all the best for your life here in Malta, and obviously your continued connection with Australia and just being a world traveller